Ready if you wanna start up, right? Press the record button. Start.
Ready.
Ready.
Okay, good evening. This is the meeting of the Rowley Conservation Commission for January 7th, 2014. This meeting of the Rowley Conservation Commission is hereby called to order under the authority of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Town of Rowley's Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and the Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw. We'll now call the roll for attendance. Dave DeMonico.
Present.
Bob Garner is absent. Judy Keys.
Here.
Sam Strife is presently absent. Kurt Turner.
Here.
And Doug Watson
Here.
is chairing. And I forgot to bring in the nameplates.
Well, I'm Doug Watson. The next break we'll go down.
Okay. Well, for administrative items, if I could make a request on an authorization of my payroll request. And this is the timesheet with the request for my taking Thursday off.
So, right?
Yes.
Oops. 7:15, that's good. Sorry.
You did take your nose off with it. I was asleep at the switch.
I just received a request to start the annual task of preparing the town report, or our report, the Conservation Department report for the town report. So I do not specifically have a draft to present to you.
Well, it's a matter of changing the numbers, isn't it?
Pardon me?
It's mostly a matter of changing the numbers, isn't it?
Well, a matter of changing the numbers, expressing your terms of service, a little notice and thank you of Dr. Carpenter's service to the commission, where he chose not to be reappointed this past June. And recognition of the work of finalizing conservation restriction on the golf course, that being done, the very recent acquisition of almost 2 acres of protected open space adding to the contiguous to the Ice Pond Drive open space off Haverhill Street. And what other kind of things do we cover in that? That's probably, unless there's something I've missed. That would
Put in
pretty much be
on the town meeting vote and ongoing process of the
oh, for the
of
Brad
the
Street?
Sierra, the
Yeah.
Brad Street.
Yes,
'Cause that's
certainly that could be mentioned as a work in progress, so to speak.
You mentioned your administrative assistant, tip of the hat.
Yes, I do. do I do? So more than likely, probably next week with Jean's assistance, I'll just email the draft out to you folks. And just, because it doesn't have to be voted on or anything, but I certainly do like to have you aware of
Well, yeah.
that report so that it can be submitted in a timely manner. They've requested, I believe, I think they requested it be submitted to the selectman's office. Maybe it was the 17th?
Okay.
17th? Yeah. Well, I know that they historically subscribe at a relatively early date with full acknowledgement that stuff will be trickling in towards the end of January or whatever, so. But anyway, it's nice to have a goal to shoot for.
Sure. And you always, it's always nice to be the department that actually meets the deadline.
I assume the open space committee is mentioned in there?
Yes.
You may want to consider.
And actually, what's going to be mentioned is trying to advocate for people that
That's actually a good idea.
are interested. As
We
we
have openings on both boards.
Well, as well as that brings up the subject of, with Dr. Carpenter stepping down from the Conservation Commission, we lost a Conservation Commission representative to that board. So I didn't know if there'd be, Commissioner Turner is already serving as the liaison and representative on the Community Preservation Act Committee. We didn't know whether any of the other commissioners here would possibly want to get involved with the Open Space Committee.
That's a good question.
You're nodding your head, Dave. Would you like to?
No, I can barely make these now with my schedule with the kids. So it's a tough time in my life.
Sure. Well, it's tough with the little ones. Yeah, so if anybody wants to, let's let Brent know. But I do want to put in that there's an opening and would people please apply. I need to say that every time that we can.
Right.
You may want to also note, leave it up to you, whether you want to, talking about Dr. Carpenter's resignation from this board, that you may want to mention that he does continue as the open space representative to the Community Preservation Committee.
Well, right, yes, he's still on the Open Space Committee, yes. Okay.
Is the open space committee limited to a certain number, or?
No, the
Yeah,
problem
it's
has been getting more
people on
active
it.
bodies
Yeah.
in recent history.
How many people are on it now?
I do not know, other than Dr. Carpenter.
I'm not sure there is.
Well, I'm going to say, one person does not a committee make.
Right.
The committee of the whole.
That is all I had technically scheduled for administrative items. And so since until the other applicant arrives, I would like to mention one thing, and this involves the water treatment plant project. And just forgive me for a second here, because I need to. A situation recently came up that involves their establishment of a security fencing around. Here it is. Okay. What is commonly referred to as well station number 5, and just for orientation purposes, here's the dirt road access coming across the conserved open space parcel, then the pre-existing pump house at what they call station number 5 for the well field is in this location. The plant is being constructed up on what used to be a hillside, but has been substantially brought down as we got involved with the project. So there's an existing dirt road that goes over here to where the actual well heads are. And this is a well field which has, I think it's 6 actual wells that are grouped in relatively close proximity, kind of on a little 45-degree angle here, I think is the configuration. And so what was proposed was for the security fencing to come down and encompass all the wellheads and the electric circuitry that provides power to the submersible pumps, which I believe are right in the wellhead itself. When they first came around the existing pump house and started down the gravel road here, unbeknownst to them, they didn't have the plans that they had, which indicated where the underground electric conduits were, had positioned those conduits on the opposite or western side of the dirt road. And when they first dug one of their holes here, they actually punched through and found where the real underground electric conduits were. Thank goodness they didn't actually sever the live feed going to the pumps. They hit duplicate wires that had been installed, for the eventuality of possibly needing to switch things or whatever. That's always a good thing to have at least an extra 1 or 2 lines. But that resulted in I receiving a request for them to go off of the dirt road. Now, the reason this is being discussed with the commission this evening, because this is the area where we have 2 certified vernal pools. And so, in evaluating the site, because they need to clear or cut an approximate 10-foot, 8 to 10-foot wide clearing of vegetation for the security fence to actually do its thing, is to be secure. Obviously, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to put a fence right next to an existing tree that you could just climb up and just jump off and be over the fence. So when they asked me out to the site, they discovered that kind of following these contours around the depression where the vernal pool is located is what appears to be a horse path through the woods that is already substantially cleared of vegetation. So I had requested them at our site visit to explore the possibility of coming over with the fence and following that path and then going back down here, because it would have resulted in almost 0 clearing and cutting of vegetation. Due to the sensitive nature of the area and stuff, of course, I wanted to see, avoidance, minimization, and if you can't minimize, then restore. So we were trying to practice avoidance in terms of clearing for it, which it seems they can do. Some little bit of clearing has to be done. I think they said the cutting would actually amount to maybe only 3 or 4 trees when they actually come down and go back around where they wanted to, encompassing the wellheads. So I just wanted to let the commission know about that and make sure that I was on the right, or my actions were, agreeable and made sense to the commission. And,
How much more does that add to the fence line?
Well, surprisingly enough,
From a standpoint of cost.
from the standpoint of cost, it adds $8,984 would be the total amount of the change order. It apparently, and most of that isn't necessarily involved in length of fence.
Yeah.
It's involved in what I think they term a terminal.
Yeah.
A terminal post or whatever, which I think is like a load bearing and has to do when it changes a
Every
certain
time you
amount
change
of
direction.
angles and
Yeah.
stuff. So anyway, that's,
Well, no, I think that makes sense. It's that or really intrude on the vernal pools, right?
well, yeah, they originally had asked to do something like go from here and cut a straight line and go up to here where they encountered the problem on the dirt road. They wanted to break off right there.
Right.
And I said, okay, to be fair, flag it out in the woods for me and invite me back out to actually evaluate it, and I'll bring that before the commission. But I said, since we've been out there and I saw this horse trail, is there any way you can use the horse trail? And they appear to be going in that direction, so.
What kind of fence is this, chain link?
Yes. Other than that, I don't know much more about it, other than I'm assuming it's the same type of chain link fencing that is established around all their well stations and stuff.
So, I assume that as far as small amphibians go, they can shoot back and forth and have friendly relations between the two vernal pools?
Yeah, this would not provide any type of barrier.
But the rabbits and foxes and others?
And they can actually more than likely squeeze underneath it when they want to.
Burrow at least.
All right.
Yeah.
Good question. Okay, well, good to keep us up to date on that.
Okay, so that's bringing us time period.
This is the 7:45 item on the agenda. A legal notice of the Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with Wetlands Protection Act, General Laws 131, Section 40 as amended, and the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Public hearing will be held on Tuesday, January 7, 2014 at 7:45 p.m. at Room 5, Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider a notice of intent application filed by Kimberly A. Rock Institution for Savings for proposed construction of additional parking spaces to existing site layout and new drainage facilities, possibly within the 200-foot riverfront area, 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands, and DEP approved groundwater protection area zone 2 at 312 Haverhill Street, map 14, parcel 12. Good evening, Mr. Weir.
Good evening. For the record, Charlie Weir, Meridian Associates. This is Kim Rock from the Institution for Savings, the applicant. We had met about this informally some months ago, and about expanding the parking lot. And I think everybody's familiar with the site. I walked through the project is not terribly complicated. The existing conditions of the bank, the light gray is the existing paved surface, and there is a septic system in this location. As part of the first phase of this project, there was a water quality swale installed here. It's actually what's called a stone diaphragm, which helps clean up the water as well, and there's a grass strip between that and the water quality swale. The same thing occurs around the balance of this, right near the edge of the pavements here. But there's a stone diaphragm, and then a water quality swale, which runs around that edge. What we're proposing, I'll get back into the kind of the square footages disturbance of riverfront area in a second. But in a nutshell, what we're proposing to do right now, this edge of pavement just comes around and there is no formal parking on this edge. What we'd like to do is what you see in this gray area is to install some angled parking spaces. There's 14 spaces there. We're proposing to still maintain a water quality swale through this area, but it's smaller than the one that's there now. And then we're proposing an infiltration basin in this area, and we're capturing. I'll get into the drainage in a second, but there's actually a sediment forebay and another water quality swale in this location. But the primary BMP that does most of the treatment on this site is that infiltration basin, and that really is replacing the water quality swale. What I'd like to do is just walk you through, and I did this before, but just as a reminder, just walk you through the premise for allowing the work in the riverfront area. And this, in my cover letter, which I might as well, I was going to save it to the end, but DEP has commented on this project. And the two things they brought up was number one, and this is shame on me, the intention, the existing riverfront restoration area is a fenced-in area that exists throughout here. Our intention is not to enter that area. Is to, I know we've talked about this, Brent and I talked about it, but after, I had it in my head that perhaps we were entering the area. When I talked to the designer, because April was trying to, April Ferraro, again, the intention is not to enter that area, and we need to do a better job of clarifying that. I'll draw a little sketch for you of what our intention is on that. DEP, in their comments, said that we shouldn't be entering that area, so we'll clarify that. The second thing that they asked for was a narrative on the performance standards for the riverfront area. In the opening cover letter, I thought that's what I did. They probably want something a little more formal than that. So I'll take, that's probably a good outline for that, but I'll do a more formal job of presenting the performance standards for riverfront. What you see in that sketch is the original, that's the old McIntyre's Clam Shack. I don't know if you remember that place or not, Brent. I don't know if you were around for those days or not. But
I was around, but I don't believe they were open.
well, I was around when it was open. So, anyways, in
a lot of climbs there.
in the docker, this is just to orient ourselves. The roadway is out in this
Right.
here, and the river is over here. The darker shade there shows the area that was degraded within the 100-foot, within the 1 to 200 foot riparian zone. I don't know if that's really the right thing to call it anymore. They go back and forth on the proper nomenclature.
0 to 100 foot.
The 0 to
is the
100
right
foot,
area,
yeah.
right,
It's a riparian area. The original, that area right there was about 17,990. And then the yellow area was the degraded area that was within the inner 100 riparian. And that was 4985. It was a total of 22,975. This is what we have today. Again, here's what we're proposing today. Here is here's the roadway. The river's over in this area. The dark, again, is the 1 to 200, and the yellow is what's within the 100. And this reflects the 14 additional spaces. The numbers, comparing the original to the 100 to 200, we had 17,995 square feet of disturbance. We're proposing 15,090. Within the 0 to 100, we had 4985, and that's being reduced. Obviously, there's only a small portion there, 590 square feet. So the totals are 22,975 versus what we're currently proposing, which is 1,500 680 for a reduction of 7,295, which is about 32% reduction in overall disturbance. The other thing, and Brent had asked that we and I thought it was a good idea once I did do the number, is riverfront area. One of the things that is allowed in riverfront area with proper performance standards being met is that you are allowed to disturb up to 10%. Now that's not a given. You still have to do an alternatives analysis, and you have to show how you meet the performance standards. Actually, a very large, I forget the exact the totals here. We have 6.75 acres. This is a large lot, and the river runs right through the middle of it. So when you take 200 feet, and there's more on the other side, when you take 200 feet on either side and you total, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me.
It's like 24,000.
Yeah, it works out that the amount of disturbance that we have within there is actually short of that 10%. It's 9.5% to be exact. Now, I didn't know, and Brent had brought that up, I didn't know that number was going to come there. It might have come to 12% for all I know. I was basing my belief that we could do this on the premise that we had a larger degraded area, and now we're still below that initial degraded area, and we're not touching the riverfront restoration. But that is one more number to buttress that we are below that 10%. To get into into the design itself, I did allude to there's 14 new spaces. We have a water quality swale, infiltration. Now, what I would like to do is walk through the standards and how we meet the standard, the water quality standards for the project. The first standard is that that there's no untreated conveyances, and in this case we have impervious surfaces. We have the building. This portion of the parking lot is unchanged. It actually runs into this water quality swale and runs down and in. Now, I'm going to get into quote-unquote redevelopment. I don't usually do that. I usually, when I do a project, I usually just bring everything completely up to snuff with current regs. This water quality swale, back when this was designed, I forget the exact date, but at the time, LID was kind of a new idea, and the water quality swales, that I don't even remember exactly, but we got much higher removal rates on water quality swales under the old regulations than you do under the new regulations. And at that time, with the grass filter strip and the diaphragm and the water quality swales, we were over the 80% total suspended removal rates. With this design the way it is today, DEP only gives you a 50% removal rate. So I'm going to get into that in a second, but that's why I am making a claim that this portion of the site I'm treating as redevelopment, because I don't want to have to figure this out. I've got a BMP that was designed in accordance with the regulations at the time, and I don't want to touch that with the site. On this half of the site, where this water runs down in here, in fact, it's probably 60 to 70% of the site. This portion of the site, I'm dragging into full compliance with the current stormwater standards, and I'll get into explaining how we do that. This portion of the site runs in this direction, gets into this swale. It actually runs, sheet runoff runs down into the swale. The swale carries around and into this water quality swale. There is a diaphragm, stone diaphragm along here to provide a little bit of pre-treatment to the water quality swale, which is also considered pre-treatment. And those are both pre-treatment structures before it empties into the infiltration basin. Then the second portion is the runoff. We're proposing a curve now so that the runoff will be directed down, around, and into a sediment forebay. The sediment forebay provides from the pre-treatment to the then water quality swale, which then empties into the primary BMP, which is the infiltration basin. There is then a wide, broad-crested weir at this location, so that any water that fills up, and this will fill up in larger storms, will then be directed out across this area. It actually functions similarly to that now, except that the basin is longer, so the area that it spreads out is a wider area. The second standard is no increase in the rate of runoff. We've provided a hydrologic report, and there is a slight reduction in the rates of runoff, given that we've reoriented these BMPs. Number 3 is recharge. Under the original design of this project, there was no recharge in there. And the reason for that was, at that time, you used to be able to take total impervious surfaces and say, you could subtract the total impervious from that you proposed. You could subtract what existed versus what was proposed and say, hey, I've got 22,000 square feet of impervious surface, so I subtract that out, I get 0, so I don't have to do any recharge. And that's the way this was designed and approved. Under, I think it was in 2008, that changed, that policy changed. They now treat it that if you're doing a new project and you're proposing impervious surfaces, they want you to infiltrate those surfaces. So infiltration, and that's really why I think that this water quality swale in many ways was acting like an infiltration basin. And that's, in what we're proposing here is very much similar. It's a little bit wider, but it's similar to the water quality swale that's there now. The idea is that that the stormwater from, again, everything from about here, I think, because there's everything from here down, the building and all of this parking ends up in that infiltration basin. So we do we're required to infiltrate, I think these are A-type soils, and we provide the calculations in the stormwater management report that we did. But there's a water quality volume that we have to meet, and we do, not water quality, but a recharge volume that we have to meet, and we provided for that in that infiltration basin. We're also required to recharge at least 65% of all the impervious surfaces on site. And lo and behold, it worked out that this portion of the site is 35%, and the balance that was left was 65. That's a little bit of luck on our part, so that I don't have. Again, I could have, I think, gone to the redevelopment standard and kind of argued my way out of that. And said, well, I don't meet recharge, but I'm doing redevelopment. I didn't have to do that. I meet the recharge requirements for the site completely. Water quality, 80% removal rates. The site, again, the balance of this site, which runs to this infiltration basin, and we're getting 80% removal rates within that. The water quality swales, we get a 50% removal rate. There's 2 of them here and here. The sediment forebay, I get a 35% removal rate. So that's, you add those up, I don't know what the exact number is, but we're, for this 75% of the site, we're getting, on average, probably about a 90% removal rate. I'd have to check the numbers exactly, but it's well in excess of the required 80%. This is where I do make the redevelopment argument, in that I don't want to reinvent this end of the site. I'm going to allow this site to continue to run into that water quality swale, which only gets, under the old reg, got over 80%. Under the new reg is 50%. So that's where I am. Now moving on to number 5 is land use with high potential pollutant loads, which are LEPLs. This is not a LEPL, so it's not applicable. A critical area. This does drain to a critical area. The site is the Batchelder Brook flows down into the ACEC eventually, and it is considered an outstanding resource water. So this is tributary to an ORW. As such, it is considered a critical area. What that does is we have to provide treatment for 1 inch of rainfall over the impervious surfaces versus the half inch, which is required if it's if it was not a critical area.
Within what period of time?
It's not time-based. It's just, you just take the volume. It's a, I had when I first started getting into the stormwater management regs when they first came out in whatever year it was, in the early 90s, late 90s, I had trouble separating out what 1 inch of rainfall over what period of time. It isn't really, it's assumed to be a first flush. It's assumed to be, the short burst period of a storm. Many storms don't even get to 1 inch. So you might have 1 inch over 48 hours. You could also have 1 inch in half an hour. And that's probably 1 inch in half an hour is probably a 90-year storm or something like that. The point being is that what you do is when you take that 1 inch, it's really a very, I shouldn't say barbaric, but you just take your impervious surface, multiply it by the 1 inch, and you come up with a volume. And then you have to size your BMP to hold that volume and to treat that volume. So it's really all about, where in the old days you talk about 100, and we still do. In fact, standard number 2, where it was talking about increase in rates of runoff. That study is done for a 24-hour storm. I think I want to say it was a 7.1 inch storm. I'm not even sure about that. But that's a 24-hour storm. That's a hydrograph. It's a pretty sophisticated calculation where you do a hydrologic study. For the water quality standards, it's far less sophisticated. It's really just volume calculations and then providing a BMP that can treat and hold, in this case, recharge that volume. So that's where the 1 inch comes from. In this case, the other piece that's required of the critical area is that we need to have pre-treatment in a non-critical area. When you have a BMP, infiltration BMP, you do have to provide pre-treatment. Now, the pre-treatment could have been just as simple as the sediment forebay and that water quality swale. In fact, that is what we're doing there. The problem that we run into is you have to have in excess of 44% removal rate in your pre-treatment that goes to a critical area. So we ran into a tricky situation here in that this water quality swale will give you a 50% removal rate with pre-treatment. Well, the pre-treatment on this is pretty easy. We have a stone diaphragm along that edge, and the idea is that sheet flow runs here. It gets some pre-treatment before it goes into the water quality swale, which is itself another pre-treatment. Over here it was a little trickier because we have a point source. We're dragging everything down to that point and then get it into the water quality swale. So we really, with a straight face, couldn't say that a diaphragm's going to work there, because you'd only have a little section of stone, where this is, in here I think it's 150 feet of a stone diaphragm where the storm is spread over that. Where in this area you'd only have maybe 10 feet of it. So what we did, so that this water quality swale has a pre-treatment structure, is the sediment forebay. So it runs down into the sediment forebay, which is pre-treatment, which then runs into the water quality swale, which a water quality swale with pre-treatment gives us 50% removal rate, and the 50% removal rate is greater than the 44%. So again, this is all designed to meet the requirements in a critical area.
Charlie, could you briefly describe the stone diaphragm? How wide is that? Or? It's
about 1 foot wide. I think it's 1 foot deep. It's just crushed stone, and what it does is the idea is that it gives you, it's really just some initial treatment, so that sediment that runs off of that will be captured in that stone diaphragm.
Thanks.
The next standard is the redevelopment, which I've alluded to, and I think I've explained it completely, that I'm treating this portion of the site, and it's interesting. I've seen this done. I normally just design. Usually we're dealing with, like in the original design of this, we were knocking down a building, putting in a new parking lot. You just go and you meet all the requirements. And when DEP first came out, I saw this kind of, the first standard you see in development is, well, if there's an increase in the impervious surface, well, then it's not considered redevelopment. Well, in this case, we have, this 1,300 square feet, I think, more or less, of new pavement. So I said, well, then you're not redevelopment. Interestingly enough, they have this middle ground, which is a partial redevelopment, and it starts to make sense when I see a project. This is the first one I've ever really thought about it. Said, yeah, this is the case where we have, a building and a large parking lot, and I think the increase in impervious on the site is 6%. And taking this portion of the site, which is not being touched, and I could make the claim that all the impervious surfaces fall under the redevelopment. But I'm not really doing, what I'm really doing is saying, well, this portion of the site over here that has a BMP, and I'm not touching that portion of the site, that I'm just gonna maintain that site the way it is today. It has a BMP in place that was designed in accordance with the regs at the time, it's functioning well, so I leave that alone. Then where I am doing a lot of work in this area, then I'm bringing, so it's arguable, I guess the one standard that's not being met is they like to see, okay, what standards are not being met, and it depends on how you look at it, but it's arguable that this portion of the parking lot that goes into that water quality swale only has a 50% removal rate. However, it was getting an 80% removal rate previously under the old reg. So it's sort of, I think that's where the redevelopment kind of dividing line comes in. The last three standards, 8, 9, 10, number 8 is the construction pollution prevention plan erosion control report, which spells out how erosion is being handled on the site. The primary erosion control barrier is the we have a filter sock around the edge. What I was going to do is draw very quickly, and this is what DEP is. They're looking at this filter mitt, and there's the fence with the riverfront area, the restorations inside of that, and there's the filter mitt well within it. And we'll redraw the plan, but I'll draw you a little sketch. The idea is here's the paved surface this way. This is up. The sun's up here. And right now, what we're proposing is to run down into this. There's our infiltration basin. And then as you come up here, the fence is going to be right. The fence is right there. Now I looked at it a little more closely, I don't believe we need to touch this fence at all. I think we can leave it in place. Right now, there's actually the water quality basin. We're kind of moving things up into this area, but what I'd like to do is put the silt sock right on that side of the fence, and then keep all my work on this side of the fence. And there are some trees and things in this area, but the canopies are not reaching out into this area, so I don't think we'll be touching any of the root structures. Unfortunately, over the holidays, Brent was good enough to send out an email about setting up a sidewalk, and I did not read his email correctly, and so I didn't set up a meeting with him. So he does not have the benefit of. He did go out to the site. He was good enough to go out, but he didn't have me there. It wasn't marked out. So we'll schedule that, and I'll walk through what I think is a better. I'll walk Brent through it in this commission too if you want to do a sidewalk. We also provided a long-term operation and maintenance program, which is this operation and maintenance for all the BMPs which are on the site, and how those will be handled. And then the last piece is the illicit discharges, and there are no illicit discharges from the site.
That's because you demolished them all. The bank.
We got rid of them. Yeah, we got rid of them. So that being said, I'd be happy to entertain any questions you have.
Could you just put the sketch you just made down here, because you were holding it horizontal because.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I did a really good job of the sketch in the office today. I should have just brought this, because I was explaining it to somebody. Here's the pavement. And right now, I think, out in this area, the swale does reach up to about here, but it's narrow. But so just for argument's sake, let's say the existing grade is about through here, and we've got riverfront plantings on this side of the fence. So what I'd like to do, I know we're squeezing, actually what we're doing is we're actually doing a little bit of a bump.
You're putting
And
fill.
this comes
yeah,
down.
You're actually putting
Li-
fill.
A little bit, right, but it's only a few inches, and I think when we do the detail, we'll do a much better job than what we have right now. So any of the work will be on this side, so we'll come up and over and do that, and that'll be our water basin in there, and we'll keep all the work on this side, so there's no, there's no disturbance at all of that restoration area, which was not only did DEP flag it, but Brent was good enough to point out that the previous order of conditions was unequivocal that it would be left in perpetuity. So we're respecting that, but again, that's.
So if I understand what you've said, Charlie, I understand that part, that you're staying out of the riverfront restoration area, so that's good. And the other argument you're making, the other point at which there could be contention, is you're choosing to divide the site into essentially two areas, one that's untouched and meets old performance standards, one that is being altered and meets all current performance standards.
You could. I think it's pretty clear. I don't think there's. I think the redevelopment policy, I think, is very straightforward. I don't think that it's a. You could certainly disagree with me.
Well, no, I'm
think
just
it's
making sure I understand your argument, and I appreciate you putting
Yeah.
it in a way that lets me understand that that's
Yeah.
the possible point of contention.
And even then, the I mean, if we're really pushed to it, we could certainly look at ways to try to.
Well, I was just gonna
bring the site
say,
into conformance.
if somebody were to say no to that,
Yeah.
it's not out of the question for you to alter that portion of the site to meet current standards, but it would require basically digging it all up and building something different.
It may not be possible, and this is the reason why. The groundwater is dropping in this direction.
Uh-huh.
In this end, we've got deeper groundwater down in here.
Mhm.
Up at this end, this water quality swale. The groundwater is close to the bottom of the swale. Over here, we have depth, we have separation to the groundwater. Over here, we don't. So this, I can't, over here I took a water quality swale that technically was getting a 50% removal rate, and I'm converting things into an infiltration basin, which have an 80% removal rate.
Right.
I can't so quick and easy
Do that
grab
right.
this and turn it into
Infiltration
an.
there.
Yeah, so,
Very little.
so it's, if it was easy for me to do, I would have done it.
Mhm.
You know, because if it was just a matter of saying, you know what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put a little block around this end, turn that into a basin, and voila, I got an infiltration basin and
Well, that's what I
80%
was
removal
asking.
rates. Right, if it was easy for me to do, I would have done it.
Well, what makes it hard?
Well, the
What
other thing
makes
is
it
you've got a
hard?
no cut, no disturbance zone there,
Right.
Well,
which is
change.
What
kind
makes
of in the
it, what
area.
makes it hard
Depth of water.
is there isn't a BMP that gives you an 80% removal rate. That's, short of, I could do a pocket wetlands, I'll have to chop up an area like that and put a swale in, and
What if you started the swale from the street, but it just made it, double the length?
because it doesn't give me, I don't get more treatment under that. The way they do it is, the water quality swale is, you size it based upon the amount of water that gets to it, and then it's, again, these are not real sophisticated. You go to a table, and the table says, water quality swale, 50%. So I can't say, okay, well, I'll take a long one, I'll put one here, and I'll put another one there, and voila, I got 100%. It doesn't work that way. I got 50%, and I can't, I can't,
That's all he gets credit for, unless he can come up with
Another
BMP
BMP.
to sandwich in there with it.
Right.
Okay.
And the other piece that, I'm kind of tied in here is, I've got, this is, and you can't really see it on here, but this is I got the septic system right here,
Yeah, right.
and there's kind of a steep slope that comes down into here. So my hands are kind of tied in that area, and this is kind of climbing up to the old gas station over in that area as well. So, again, that BMP as it exists today was approved. I'm not suggesting that I put in a BMP that's got a 50% removal rate.
No, I get it.
You
You just want to leave it alone.
I want to leave it alone.
And it works.
And it does
It
work.
does function.
Yeah.
So, Commission, did you see Brent's memo at all?
No, that was done
Okay.
too late.
No,
Let me
I
just-
haven't seen it, and that's fine. And,
Well,
and
let me just, certainly I'll let you read it in a minute, but just, if you could just turn it over and read the back. The Commissioner Garner, who couldn't be here tonight, has a specific question. I wonder if you could address it.
it's a comment for this. Which is it? Oh, who's that?
So AA is right here. Because this also has to do with the groundwater level.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I believe there is on the. We did a boring. We did an auger right in the middle of that, and I believe that there's a. I believe it's on the plan. But let me look, and if it's not, I'll get it on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that.
Right, and he's looking for
Right.
where you got this.
Right, it's right here. There's my soil log right there. I did the,
And that is from, so
I just
is
did-
that located on the plan?
yeah, it's located.
Did A1?
Yeah, it's right. It's right there. It's A1. It's right smack dab.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there it is.
That's in
Okay.
the shaded out, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, okay.
So A1's there. So
Okay.
so that
All right,
information
good.
has been provided.
Great, okay.
So
Thank you.
it was actually there was an auger hole I did. I got the auger in the back of my car. I was driving by that day. I popped in. So.
Nothing like soil boring, eh?
Yeah. It was a nice, easy one. It was nice
Yeah.
and sandy. It was nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Now, you probably want to do a site walk. I would assume Brent hasn't really had
Yeah.
the opportunity to
Yep.
have it properly marked out and to do his site walk. And we certainly, there will be a peer review that will be done by Larry Graham at some point as we go through the planning board process. So,
Just an idle thought off the top of my head. If you divided the site into two, put a vertical line in there and made it a lot A and a lot B, that might grandfather, before any of this gets finalized, it might grandfather you in with regard to treating the west side there as the way you want to treat it.
I don't think I think I've got it. I think the regs give me that. I think
Okay.
that's why there's a pre-development standard.
Well, yeah, I think
I'm not
the
pre-development.
question for the commission is if you have any, at least I think, see if I'm summarizing this correctly, it's really the redevelopment. It's the application of whether you consider this redevelopment. And if you believe, as he's proposing, that it's only this portion of the site that's being redeveloped,
Yeah.
that he's not redeveloping the
And
whole
that's-
site.
And that's exactly it.
Right.
And I can even draw a line. The building and all of this, this is all falling this way. So,
It all goes right.
so
Yeah.
this portion of the site, I'm treating as new development. This portion of the site, I'm treating as redevelopment. And I think it falls under it because I'm not touching this. I'm
Right.
not doing anything there. And I think it meets the definition, and I think it meets the intent. I don't think that there's a gray area on this. That's my belief.
Well, it's also certainly arguable that the alternatives would be a lot more intrusive and would not be a net improvement,
No, I don't think so.
if there are alternatives, but
Right.
Yeah.
even assuming there's always alternatives, like you say.
Yeah.
But would they really be any kind of an improvement to the site?
Right.
Given that it's, as far as I can tell, and from what you've told us, it's a functioning,
It is absolutely. These
functioning
function great.
structures.
These
Yeah.
are, the bank has done a fabulous job maintaining the water quality swales. They make me look good. a lot of people, they put in water quality swales and come back 10 years later and they're completely
They'll burn out,
overgrown,
yeah.
but the bank really does a beautiful job maintaining the site, so.
I guess my only concern is that I don't have a problem with this commission, at least I don't sense any problem with the commission going along with what you're proposing with DEP without a problem, and say, you've got to deal with the whole site as a whole site.
That is not DEP, this thing that I just walked you through is very, very specifically spelled out in my stormwater management. They did not bring this up as an issue. Their issue was,
intrusion into
they say,
the
don't be touching this.
riverfront.
And do a better job explaining how to meet the performance standards of the riverfront area. Those were their two comments.
Right.
They didn't discuss my redevelopment, that this was not an issue for them. Now, could they bring that up now? Possibly. I've never seen, DEP usually brings up their issue, the issue gets handled by on the local level, and they're thrilled. That's really what they're suggesting, that, they're saying, gee, this is what we see. And they don't really want to get involved. They would rather just make their comment and then have it addressed.
Well, and certainly the big deal here is staying out of the riverfront restoration area.
That absolutely is their big deal. They were unequivocal in their comment, was you're not going in there, you're not going to enter it. And they were, the fact.
We huddled on that.
Yeah, and Brent may have a, something to add to that, because I know he spoke to the gentleman who wrote that. I was encouraged when I read it. I was encouraged that that their one comment was we needed to be a little better with our narrative on. And again, like I said, I thought I did that in my cover letter,
Yep.
but I guess I didn't do a good enough job. And we can do a better job on that. But DEP isn't saying this needs to be redesigned. They don't want to meet the riverfront, and they'll come right out and say that. I've seen those comments.
Yeah, I was gonna say, lots of times they'll say, doesn't meet standard number 4,
Right.
doesn't meet standard number 4.
And that's not what they're saying. They're
Right.
saying, and if they had belief that there was serious trouble with this design, I think they would have said that. I don't know if Brent has anything to add to that based upon the conversation you had. I thought that the comments that I read were more constructive, were more like, okay, looks like a pretty good project, it needs a little bit of shining up, but that's the way I took it.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm an optimist, I always think that. So.
Curiosity question, on the other side of the brook, is there any land available for additional redoing, restoration, if you needed to?
There might be. I haven't taken a hard look at it. I think that somebody's over there is using it as a driveway sometimes, I think, no?
There's property right there that abuts it, so.
Yeah, and I think but I'd have to take a look at it.
Well, don't, I'm, just
Yeah.
thinking in terms of your narrative, you may want to throw something in there about that.
Yeah.
You have additional available in case there were some.
I remember at one time, Brent, I thought at one time the abutter may have been kind of encroaching into the riverfront.
I don't know, we never specifically went over that.
Yeah.
I think the land has changed hands since you put that up there.
It has, and it might not be going on anymore, but I'd have to take a
watch
closer
the
look at
beaver
it.
sectioning up some of the trees. from over there.
Right. If I can get rid of the beavers, that will improve the habitat immensely.
Where do you stand with the planning board with this?
We're hoping to, probably have the public hearing opened later this month and get the Larry going with his peer review. So we're not really anywhere with them yet until they open the public hearing. The primary thing is, I think Larry's review and your review are the two critical paths on this. I think I think the planning board's going to look at it and say, is the Concom happy with this design?
Yeah, right.
Is Larry Graham reviewing it and saying that he agrees as a third party? That I think those are the two critical paths. I think if we muster those two, I think the planning board will push this right along.
The second story work didn't add any additional impervious surface?
That's correct. I just noticed that tonight when I drove by. This area right here, there's a canopy over the drive-through, and we were, I think we were completely transparent on this. We went to the planning board, and the planning board approved this as is a minor modification to the special permit, and the site plan review. And then we ran this by Brent as well. Brent and I had a number of conversations. He spoke with DEP. And because there is no work on the ground, it's literally 15 feet up or whatever that distance is, that it didn't trigger the need for a Concom filing.
Right.
So that's why you see some work going on, and gee, why didn't we see that? Well,
It came up in
Because it's-
discussion that we
Okay,
were,
yeah.
we were aware of.
yeah, and you might as well be transparent. Why, it doesn't pay to not,
Especially then.
It's not a
so
site.
it's gonna, right, it's
It's
gonna
not a site
come-
we don't all see every
Right,
day.
and not only that, but it's gonna, what's going on the other side of Brent's cube is, he's gonna, what's that I hear about a, so,
You could only serve fried clams in your drive-up window.
I think we should do that. I think,
Great.
Kim was thinking about that, new accounts, you get fried clams. And really, this all happened, I think we brought this up with Rich. And this is a great story. The bank is way more successful than they ever thought they would be. I think you were anticipating a certain amount of accounts, and you
Yeah, I
got
mean, we
double
just
or
reached,
triple
I
that.
mean, we opened, in 2007, and we just reached 200 million, which we never
And
expected.
you were talking a third of that, weren't
Right,
you?
right.
Right. So, that's why the bank was way more successful than they ever dreamed it was going
Which
to
is,
be.
why there's a parking crunch there.
Right.
Right.
No, that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
Exactly my point. So,
Designating any of those new parking spaces as handicap?
yes. In fact, we're adding a handicap. Under the current, there's a handicap space right now, right here. I think there's 18 spaces on the site. With 18 spaces, we're required to have one handicap space. With an additional 14, bringing us up to 32, we trip it into the need for 2 handicap spaces. So we'll actually put a second handicap space right at this entrance.
That's my favorite parking place.
So, that's terrible. So, I know we've got a little bit of a process to go through.
Okay.
Looking forward to working.
Well, yeah, and we need to do a site visit. Brent at least needs to get out there. So you're thinking of opening the planning board hearing? Their
I'm
next
not
meeting,
sure when
which
it
is
will open.
Whenever.
I'm not
Okay.
sure when it will open.
I'm sure Brent will be able to get out there with you before or around the same time that happens. So.
And I will be more diligent about reading my emails from you. My apologies.
I'm not sure with the weather in the last week or so, there would have been a good day to do it
Yeah.
anyway, so.
Yeah, the second wasn't a great day. Actually, it wasn't bad in the morning.
Yesterday wasn't that bad.
Yeah, no, yesterday was beautiful. What happened with that? I got that email, and the letter was the first part of the letter was about the legal description, and then in bold letters in the middle was stuff about the hearing. Well, I didn't read the bold part. I read the legal description, and I stopped reading. I thought the letter was just about
Nothing to do with you.
Right, and so my fault for not reading the whole process.
I would say, based on that, we'll be in a position to vote on this before planning board can, we gotta look at Larry Graham's
I was gonna
feedback.
say, yeah, other than the
Yeah.
fact that we really should wait for
We gotta do the
Mr.
peer
Graham's
review.
and
Yeah, I'm not saying we will
address the
vote, but we'll be in a
stormwater.
position to have done everything we need to do, except
Right.
review his report.
Right.
In good time, so I
Sure.
think we're moving along pretty
No,
well.
I appreciate that. So.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, anybody?
Well, I think the question possibly to discuss, now, it also sounds like there's gonna be some plan revisions to clear up where, right now, it shows the
Yes.
intrusion of the limit of
Absolutely.
work going in there.
Absolutely.
So the question is, are the commission's next 2 meetings, because of trying to avoid complications in our calendar, our next meeting is 2 weeks away, is 21st, and then we have a meeting scheduled for the 11th. So I'm
February.
wondering
Yeah.
if continuing to the 11th might make more sense to get the planning board process started.
No, I concur
To-
with that.
To do the site visit, to potentially then review the modifications to the work that previously intruded into the riverfront area, and at least get us
Yeah,
in the stage when then we might know what Mr. Graham's timing is.
Yep.
and only be able to look forward to a meeting where we just come in
Yeah.
and confirm the stormwater stuff and vote.
Yeah,
At that point in time.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, all right. That sounds realistic.
Just a point of interest, I'm just interested. What's the volume that this infiltration basin takes before you achieve spillover? Do you know offhand?
Yeah,
Just interested, that's all.
it's, I don't think I have to.
1 inch.
Well,
Well, it's 1 inch of impervious
Oh,
surface.
yeah.
It is,
this is what, 2 feet deep, more or less?
it's about 1,300 cubic feet.
Interesting. That's pretty cool.
All right, so do I have a motion to continue this matter to the February 11th meeting? And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. Graham.
Mr. Weir.
Mr. Weir,
That's all right.
for a very informative presentation.
Yeah, good.
I hope that
Thanks again.
And we will see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brent.
I'm probably used to having ours up over there, so I used the whiteboard tonight.
Yeah, I probably should have done that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gino Torvallis is here this
Yep.
evening.
Just one second.
The
wait a
other
second. Just, is the 8 o'clock matter going to be postponed? All right, okay. So we'll take care of that in a little while when you come in. I wasn't
I don't
sure.
recognize the other.
I'm here from Greenbelt for the Audubon approval.
Okay,
later on.
great.
Oh,
All
okay.
right, we'll get to you next. Okay, so this is we're going to do the 8:45 item, which we had notified the applicant or the owner that we might be a little early, so he was nice enough to come a little early. This is the notice of violation 264, 268 Newburyport Turnpike, map 13, parcel lot 13, owned by 264 Newburyport Turnpike LLC, Eugene Sortzis.
I'm gonna recuse myself, being a good customer, I need to be neutral on it.
All right. Leaves us a quorum, but barely. All right, you can come on up, yeah. Hi.
Good evening.
So Brent, maybe you can walk us through this. I know you and I have talked about it a fair amount, but I'm not sure the other commissioners are familiar with what's going on here.
Yeah, well,
You can have a seat if you'd like, whatever you're more comfortable with.
that's fine. I guess the best overview is I received an anonymous report in the office of construction work taking place at the rear of what had previously been auto service garage. I don't remember the name of the business that had been in there. But basically located at, I believe the property is identified as 264 and 268 because there's 2 buildings on the property, each have a separate mailing address. And so I proceeded over to the site. This was on or about December 3rd, and discovered that basically a project that involved squaring off the parking area behind the second rearmost building, which is indicated in the assessor's aerial photo here. And so there's some grading, some excavating being done, and some large boulders. This is actually a photograph that was taken from I believe the first day when I proceeded over there. All the aerial photos just kind of show that previously it just sort of had done a smooth, sort of arcing curve at the corner. The reason this generated some concern was, number one, this abuts two of the side boundary lines, the rear boundary line and the southernmost side boundary abut Conservation Commission open space property, which also is a location of a substantial freshwater emergent swamp or bordering vegetated wetlands that has a 100-foot buffer zone. And I had previously just been there for evaluating a small airlock entranceway vestibule that was being constructed on the what had previously been the auto service building, and had actually measured on the ground, found that the 100-foot buffer zone came to up to like 6 inches away from that corner of the building. So basically I knew that most of that parking area was more than likely within the 100-foot buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetlands, and therefore grading and excavating and cutting of trees should have been preceded by a permit request to the commission. And so Tortsis was, very cooperative, and immediately got erosion control installed, and then noticed that the boulders that were being put down to be called into question for use as sort of a small retaining wall or landscape wall, that they were kind of arcing and going off in not a straight line. And I believe that as a result of our discussion and suspicions that some of the boulders were possibly over on the open space side of the property line, I believe you were getting a surveyor to come out there?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And so, you contacted Mr. Moore. Has he already been out there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so he marked out some things, and were our suspicions correct that some of the boulders needed to go back up?
I think the last one, it's a little bit, it's by half a foot.
Okay, all
And the
right.
marker was there,
So
we
the,
put it
so
back a
the-
little bit.
the short answer is yes, some of the boulders just need to be edged
They
back
gotta
up.
be, they rolled down when the kid was placing it.
Well, yeah.
And I told him specifically, you gotta keep it, and it was a big boulder, and it rolled in there. And we didn't step into conservation's land at all, so we didn't disturb that at all.
Well, again,
So,
understood, or whatever, so, so anyway, my suggestion or my recommendation was for the preparation of a request to determine applicability, because we're not looking at anything engineered, so to speak. It's just some grading, proper placement of boulders. On my second visit to confirm that the silt fence had been put in place, which it had, also became kind of apparent that at the rear boundary line, as we've seen before, some of the previous plowing activities had pushed some material. This photograph, which I realize is not the clearest thing in the world, but it turns out there's a pink flag hanging up here, which actually allows one to sort of immediately see where the rear boundary goes, because there's an iron stake for this corner down here. And so you can see there's mounded leaf material.
So this is
There-
looking this way?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, from this
Down at
corner
this
down this
corner,
way.
yeah, looking northward, and there's an old concrete, a piece of a concrete slab that got the same, the usual type of thing that just happens from snow plowing and stuff, that some materials, again, because the boundary isn't really marked. And so, just some material that needs to be pulled back, and the boundary just marked or whatever, which will occur in the process of him developing and squaring off his parking.
So
area.
has this surveyor, Mr., what was it, Moore?
Moore, yeah,
Has
John
he-
Moore,
Has he staked it?
Yes, he has.
Okay.
yeah, he's apparently put in at least 2 iron rods along that
Oh,
long
okay.
southerly boundary to give some points, so,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
All
I'm
right.
not sure what
I have one that is colored here, too, it's
Right, but it's just the point was that it's an almost 400-foot long boundary, and so it's really kind of hard to see,
Yeah.
because it was only marked in the front.
Yes, they
and
will
then
put, the
corner
front doesn't
circle.
mark at all, so if you see the mailbox now,
Yeah.
it's straight, right?
Oh, okay. Let's see.
And he's also shown on here, you can see that he marked where the pre-existing edge of the gravel was. And so-
Yep.
And so basically, the project is just really to
Bring that
square,
up, yeah.
square this off. And so my hope was that we might have started on the preparation of a request to determine applicability application, but that hasn't quite started yet, and just kind
Okay.
of waiting to do that.
Well, this was the first step, so that's
Right.
good. So you're going to, Brent can help you with filling that out if you.
Do whatever the board wants me to do, I want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
As I
So-
explained to you before.
Yeah, file an RDA. If you just come into the office, Brent, anytime he's here, that he
You
has
can,
time.
you can let me know whatever time is good for you.
Okay,
We
yeah.
can do it out and send
And
it.
he'll be happy to help you with the form. It's actually a pretty simple form, there's not a lot to it. And with that sketch in hand, you can, basically, you're attaching the sketch to the application that tells us what it is you want to do.
Now, I'll be here tomorrow from 9 to 4
I will do it tomorrow.
with a
Okay.
a little break at noontime
All right.
to take a little nourishment, but other than that.
I'll do it tomorrow morning, we'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
And then, I need to know what kind of erosion control we need to protect the thing in the back and.
Yep, we can go over that with you. If, let's see, no reason we can't get this approved, or at least reviewed, but I see no reason it wouldn't be approved as soon as it's ready and filed and on our agenda. Yeah, should be one more visit here for you.
So whatever it takes.
Right, and the erosion control is already in place, is that right?
That's the silts, the
Yeah, the
black
silt,
stuff.
silt fence
Yeah.
was put in, that was prior to the snowfall. and
Right,
stuff, so.
right. Because I remember talking to you back in early December about this process, and I
Yeah.
thought that's what had happened. So, okay. So that'll pretty much take care of that. The big boulder that fell in?
The big boulder roll in, we can always pull it back a little bit. It's gotta go by a foot, like a foot I gotta.
Yeah.
Without, again, stepping into
Well, that's why I was
conservation
just
land.
wondering how you're gonna bring a boulder
A
back
big
without getting
excavator,
on the
we
other
have
side.
a big
of it.
excavator that's gonna.
Well, yeah,
grab
but
it
just reach down and
and
pull it
pull it
back.
Okay.
Pull it in a little bit.
You got a big
Not
enough excavator
Yeah,
to
not
do
a
that.
big deal at all, but you told me to stop and I stopped everything and
Sure.
that was it, so I
Yeah.
didn't touch it.
Yep, okay. 'Cause
Well, yeah, at the time,
Well, you didn't know where
as
the
I,
line was.
well, also, I said, I'm not requiring you to hire a surveyor, I said, but, I said, doing the eyeball thing or whatever here, it looks like we're going a little bit,
So now we know exactly.
And now we
what
know,
it is,
and
and we'll do
it's,
whatever it takes, that's
which
it.
is-
Someday you'll be really glad you have this
Yeah.
marked off.
No, I wanted to do it, and I proposed that to you, I said, no, I'd like to do it.
You did.
So that way, we know exactly where we stand here, so
Yep.
there's no
Yep.
miscommunications
Sounds
down the
good.
road, that's it.
All right. So I think then, in that case, the site's stable, the RDA will get filed pretty much tomorrow, it sounds like. But we'll see you soon, and we'll just wrap this all up.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow, like 9:30, 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
and then we'll do what we're gonna do, and then we'll take it from there.
Great.
All
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
We could all recuse ourselves because we can't get the institution.
I don't.
The what, the town does? Yeah, of course.
Well, then we better hope that the Mullis doesn't ever come in, because
I
all of
know.
us will just have to walk out.
Or Dunkin' Donuts, or Off the Vine, or you can go on and on.
Right, a market basket hasn't come in before, so they need more parking badly there. I mean, I have to park on the lawn occasionally,
I know. If you go at a busy time, that is one busy
Yeah.
supermarket.
all day long.
Yes, because it's the best market around. People drive a long ways to the market.
That's
because the planning board made a big mistake in not allowing Abuzar to build a supermarket out in 1995, in my opinion.
For the competition.
Yeah. Needed that.
Yeah, but it's still a great market, so we're lucky to have it.
Is that what he wanted to do with the,
I was appointed when she wanted to do that.
so where
So many
the
things.
storage place is now?
Mhm.
Really? That would have been smart, actually.
Remember how big the site was?
So it's right
Supermarkets
beside
want
the,
enormous sites now, you know, they really want a lot of land. So I don't know how that would have
Look
worked
at the
out.
supermarket over on 1A in Ipswich, and that hardly has any space.
I know, but it's not a very successful market
not.
either. That's the thing, It won't be there for long.
Oh, I've said
Well,
that
it
for
will
20
because
years.
it's still
That's
right
the only-
by Ipswich, but-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I used to live in Ipswich,
Yeah.
not far from that market, and I drove over to this one all the time as soon as they
Oh,
built it.
sure.
Because it was worth the extra 10 minutes to come to a good market. I mean, I know people from Georgetown, Boxford,
Gloucester.
Yeah, Gloucester, they come
Gloucester,
visit.
Manchester, people come from all over to come to this market, so. But you're right about the parking, except I don't know where they put it.
Oh, towards Route 1.
You mean all that
Where they
open
put the
green?
snow.
Yeah, yeah. That would be too bad.
Plus there's a bit of a hill.
All right, well, we're keeping this gentleman waiting
Right,
here.
yeah, so,
So this is the 9 o'clock item, a request for approval of an 18 by 14 observation platform under terms of the conservation restriction for Mass, Audubon Rough Meadows Wildlife Sanctuary, 45 Patmos Road, Assessor's Designation Various.
I don't work for Audubon, I work for Greenbelt, it's one of the grantees of the restriction.
Sure,
So
that's fine.
I thought somebody from Audubon was gonna be here this evening.
no, Mr. Bill Getty called me to apologize that he had a previous commitment or
Okay.
whatever. I actually told him that since the commission had already reviewed this under the order of conditions, and that it was just an oversight, that it wasn't also considered under the terms of the conservation restriction, in terms of the fact that any proposal for any type of construction activity needs to come before review, but activities such as observation platforms, benches, kiosks, signage, trail markers, that type of thing is allowed to be established under the CR. And so this was just an oversight that at the time when we did have a very in-depth discussion and in fact requested some slight modifications in the construction and the fastening of the observation platform itself. It was just an oversight that we forgot to also consider it as a request under the CR. Right, so we have received an official letter dated December 20th, which we received on December 30th, that does ask for consideration and as one of the, I should say co-holders when you have two people on, I don't know what you say with
With
three,
three, right.
tri-holders.
Yeah, right,
or,
right.
So requests were also put into to Greenbelt as well as to DCR.
I know Greenbelt issued approval to Audubon,
Yeah,
I'm not
that was
sure
attached.
if DCR has responded to them or not yet, but didn't see why they wouldn't.
No, I couldn't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's clearly permitted under the CR.
Right.
Yep.
It just needs to be
And-
reviewed. And
and-
it's already been looked at.
Well, and I was going to say, if anything, we scrutinized it in much greater detail under the order of conditions for its proximity to resource areas and how it was actually going to be
Method of
sited, and
construction.
minimization of cutting of woody stem vegetation and judicious pruning and the viewscape aspect of it. And so we actually probably gave it a much higher level of scrutiny under the order and approved it with some minimal modifications, which actually were probably very constructive suggestions in order to keep it from being lifted up and transported, since it is in an area that could be subject to coastal storm flowage. So my verbal recommendation was for the commission to consider approving it under the terms of the CR, as we did under the order of conditions.
Any commissioners' comments?
No?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Sorry we had to make you come out to do this.
Quite all right.
Just kind of how it works. Yeah, it's a nice looking construction of a deck.
Yeah,
Looks good.
and they've done a nice job out there with the various improvements, the tree plantings and,
Yep.
you know. kinda
Yeah, every time I
continuing
go
on.
out, I'm impressed with some other little thing that's just a little bit better.
Yeah,
And they keep at it.
yeah, they're doing a really good job,
Yeah.
so.
Yep. Okay, well, if there's no other comments, then do I have a motion to, let me see, what would it be? Approve the construction of the observation platform, 18 by 14, under the terms of the conservation restriction.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and all against? Thank you, sir.
Thank you guys.
And I'm sorry, what's your name?
Mike Carboni.
Mike Carboni.
Well, I'm Dave Rimmer's assistant.
Oh, okay,
Construction
very good.
Department there, so.
Haven't met you before, but thank you for coming.
Okay, thanks for coming. Look at that, done before.
Well, okay, we do.
So for
We need to vote on
Continuation.
Yeah, so we do have an emailed request
Great.
from Mr. DeCoulis in regards to the notice of intent application for land off of Daniels Road, AKA the Marion Way subdivision project, which has been issued tentative file number 63-65. He requests a continuation to our January 21st, 2014 meeting.
And as I understand from the exchange of emails, Horsley Witten folk are going to be here also, so
Yes.
we'll have a conversation among everyone at
Right.
that point. Okay.
And Mr. DeCoulis discovered that he never printed out for distribution the stormwater hydrology report that he was working on revising. Lost track of that and
So
came to that conclusion today.
Today, yeah. So he never gave it to them, is that, he never gave it to us? So we
He
gave it-
never finalized working on it, and so therefore, when he was asked to provide us
Mhm.
with copies back in August for given to the peer reviewers, we got pre-existing, which is why he, to his surprise, he neglected that he hadn't finished it, hadn't printed it out. So when he got Horsley Witten's comments, he apparently at that point in time realized that what they had looked at was prior version, but that's because he had never initiated giving any of us the one he was revising.
Okay, so has he
It was
done
in
that now, or
process.
is he about to do that?
No, he's working on finalizing.
Working on it, okay, and is that through, because it's only 2 weeks,
It's 2 weeks. He said he should have it
so you should, okay.
done, so.
It's one thing for
So
him.
some of that, I think, is going to be, I think the revision probably already had some of the things that Horsley and Witten commented on, because those had been
Okay.
previously identified by other parties as being some issues, so.
I just don't want him to continue it at the last minute with them coming also, because that's, you know, it's one thing, it's no inconvenience to us, but it's.
Well, I
an
can't
inconvenience
tell
to
you
them.
that his performance has been consistent. All I can tell you is that I received an email
Yeah, I get it.
that indicated, that he should be
Yep, okay,
ready and capable of attending the meeting in 2 weeks.
very good. So do I have a motion to continue that matter to the January 21st meeting?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
Okay.
First time I've made that mistake. Put down 13 rather than 14.
Okay, at our December 3rd meeting, I believe it was, we discussed a request from the Mr. and Mrs. Pacey of 11 Clay Lane about a
The
waiver
driveway.
to the ongoing condition, which is a situation where a certificate of compliance has been issued. Now, with the commission's indulgence here, I sought through an email network sponsored by DEP Northeast Regional Office. I put out an email twice to different agents and conservation commissions. And although this, what I'm going to propose right now, hasn't been vetted by town council, I'm going to ask for permission to seek to get the opinion of town council. But what has been suggested, two things were suggested, to be totally frank. Some folks suggested requiring the applicant to file for a new permit request. I guess that's fine, and that might be technically correct, but I think the commission had already could have expressed that as being a desire and could have, brought up that type of scenario when we had the meeting on December 3rd. The other suggestion that I thought had some validity, and what I propose to present to you tonight, is something that is not backed up by being expressed in the regulations or in the act, but it was suggested to me that we amend the complete certificate of compliance and state that this certificate of compliance supersedes the previous one. Thereby, we're using the same quote-unquote form that is used, provided by DEP as a certificate of compliance. We provide all the necessary book and page information, and we just attach to it a sheet where we express the findings as well as the continuing ongoing conditions, and spell out that we're basically waiving or the one the previous, yeah.
Yeah, altering it.
Altering.
the previous. Yeah.
So, actually, that's not the most important document. What this is, where I've modified the already existing certificate of compliance form that we normally issue. But it accomplishes two things here. It puts the commission's decision on the same type of paperwork and form that would normally be presented to the registry, and so therefore contains all the pertinent information as far as referencing to the previously recorded order, as well as, with the addition of this statement, refers to the previously recorded certificate of compliance. And two, it provides a signatory page for the commissioners, if you so choose, to sign it, and would in fact confirm and back up the decision that the commission previously made to grant their request and be released from that prohibition on impervious surface on their driveway to their residence.
So, like, the theory is we would sign this, it would say at the top of it, amended.
Just as it
Just
says,
that
amended complete certificate of compliance.
Supersedes.
Certificate of compliance, I abbreviated COC, recorded at book. I mean, as soon as you go to that book and page, you'd see what it was.
Yep. And then that would consist of this document.
Yeah, the signatory page, there's a recording page that our registry never uses, and then there's, now I've adopted the strategy of providing an attachment that spells out what the ongoing conditions are. It's basically just an extension of number 4, where they just provided one line previously where you really could only
Right.
like put the numbers of the conditions.
Yeah, no, that's good. I don't see why that wouldn't work. I mean, the whole point of why he's trying to do this is so his title is clean. And that would.
Well, that was actually the commission's point. The commission made the point that they wanted to have their decision somehow in the same, represented the same way that
Right.
the previously recorded certificate of compliance is. And so the only way to do that is to put your decision in a form that is suitable for recording, and that's exactly what this does.
Yep. Yep.
Who recommended this?
Actually, my agent in Haverhill. He said, why don't you consider just issuing an amended certificate of
The
compliance?
reason I think
said,
that would work
"That's-"
is, you're not gonna get in trouble with anybody. It's gonna be recordable. It will satisfy the needs of the title examiner.
Yeah,
Nobody's gonna question it.
no?
This is just because.
And it doesn't, then I don't have to create a document, which would basically be putting all this same information on something that I have to put together.
Yeah, right, right.
I mean,
And we don't have to make him file a
Every file.
permit request, so that we
Well,
can
he
generate.
could just take this down and
Yeah,
record it.
so that we can then generate a document that he can record. This is easier. We'll just generate the document. Makes sense to me.
This is just because the driveway was paved when it was not supposed to be.
You're right.
Right.
And we issued a certificate of compliance based on that?
No, previous.
No, they paved it after the.
Under the
COC.
original.
Paved it
Yeah.
afterwards.
The developer, this is one of these situations where the
understand that.
developer had gotten the certificate of compliance. And I don't know, whether they did that just prior or as they were selling the house. And I don't even know if these folks,
Yeah,
it really
they-
didn't matter whether these folks were the original.
But they
purchaser
were,
from the
or at
developer.
least they're the ones who paved it. But nobody ever told them they couldn't.
Right, right.
Nobody ever questioned it. Until now, the house is for sale, and the broker who was alert to the.
Well, I picked up on it.
Yeah, somebody picked up. on it.
They wanted me to come out, and I was having a hard time figuring out where the heck the no cut, no disturbance zone was, and I said, oh, by the way, there was this other ongoing.
This is paved. This doesn't look like gravel.
Is this in effect an amendment to the original order of conditions?
No,
Well, in effect,
Well,
it is, yeah.
yeah.
Yes, it is.
no, well,
In effect.
but there is a process of amending an order of conditions, and that is not what this is, which is
Right.
why it's expressed as amending the certificate of compliance.
Just less paperwork.
Right.
I'm just toying with the idea of using the word revised complete certificate, or revised certificate of compliance rather than amended, but,
Well,
I don't.
actually, there's some comfort in using the term amending, because amending is something that is done to orders of conditions. We are kind of creating a new strategy here.
Yep.
But I'll be honest with you, there's nothing that prohibits this from being done. And in fact, DEP doesn't even require to get certificates of compliance anymore. They, many years ago, said, stop sending us that stuff. It's great you got it closed out, but we don't even care to even get a copy, because if we want it, we can just look it up at the registry.
Exactly. What matters is it's at the registry, not that it's in their file.
Yeah.
Same thing for us. We don't need a file copy, it's a registry copy.
No,
It's
but I
better.
do like to have it
Of
in there.
course.
So that
But if you lose it, or if you mislay it,
Oh,
the
yeah.
question isn't whether we have it, the question is whether they have it.
I'd like to skip going to town council on this. Just do it.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I forgot you mentioned that, but I don't see any impediment to it. What
That's
can they
fine.
do?
I just,
Who can complain?
Well,
Right.
well, exactly.
And if it, for some reason. it doesn't-
Maybe if it gets bounced, if for some reason the registry won't accept it, then maybe that would be cause for
I can't
us to
imagine
try
that
to.
would be the case. As long
Well,
as
I can't imagine it either, because it's not gonna trigger anything from the
But if they
registry.
do, we'll figure out
Yeah.
something different.
They have to know that that you couldn't do it,
That's right.
and they can't know that because there's
It-
nothing that says
Yeah,
you can't.
there's nothing that
That's
says
right.
you can't.
You can
Exactly.
record anything that's, in proper form.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that works. And if for some reason at some point it doesn't work, we can always ask them to do a permit.
Well, yeah, it seems such a bother to go through that.
we already voted this amendment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess you weren't, maybe you weren't here,
Yeah.
was that the
I'm
meeting
not
you
sure.
missed? Yeah.
Yeah, we voted it, we just weren't, at the time, weren't exactly sure how to handle the paperwork aspect of it, and so
That was
that's.
when you were in upstate
It's-
New York.
Actually, I think it
That
might have
was
been
my
when you were
homework
stuck in
assignment.
Chicago or someplace, Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Great, thank you. That's all I have for the evening, other than, you know, which you already saw, the good news that we received the 2 acres on Havel Street. And, I haven't seen it appear in the newspapers, but I sent it to our cable folks, and she was supposedly put it.
That was a nice letter you composed on that.
Thank you.
Everybody should notice that for reasons that totally escape Brent and me, our next meeting is in 2 weeks.
I was just trying to figure
We
that one
didn't
out.
do that on purpose exactly. But we
Well,
did all
I figure
vote on it.
it's got to have something to do with if our 3-week cycle, apparently if we had started on the 7th, must have hit a bunch of either election days or.
Yeah, I just
or-
don't,
or
I don't
something.
remember having that discussion.
Well, I don't remember having the discussion either, but,
So,
and Jean came in today and I said something to Jean about it and she just kind of looked at me like, all right, that's what we did, okay.
Nobody seems to know why, but
Well,
it's true, and Brent and I both.
so if it
included
doesn't work later on in the year, I'm gonna disavow all knowledge of knowing why.
Well, we definitely concluded it would be a lot more trouble to change the schedule at this point. So.
Are all
we're
of the
gonna do-
subsequent meetings of 3 weeks?
All the, yeah, well, one of them is 3 weeks and a
21st.
day because it falls on a, I forget what, town meeting day or something. So it's
Yeah, there's
3
one
weeks
that
plus
was
a day.
pushed.
But it actually worked out pretty well this year. We didn't hit any, didn't hit any holidays, so.
Snowstorms.
Anyway, all right, in that case, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.
Great.